Lilly can thank you.
My name's Lilly. Australia. My parents immigrated from Czechoslovakia to Australia. They met in France, and I grew up with no family in Australia apart from my 4 brothers and then my uncle. The rebel in my family. I have 4 brothers, but I was the first one to leave home, the first one to travel abroad, the first one to buy a motorcycle. And it was my idea to send my parents to Europe on their first trip after they left Europe. In 1951 they came to Australia, and then in 1972 we had a Volkswagen bus, a van, and me and my 4 brothers, we had a real community at home in the neighbourhood, and we wanted to use that van for our purpose, for the youth. So we said, let's send the parents to Europe so we can have the van. So for 6 months we had the van, but when my mother came home, I wanted to leave home, and then I decided to travel. So I came to Europe for the 19 years old. I travelled to Europe for the first time and met cousins in Germany, in Czechoslovakia, and had many different experiences. I spent 1 year in Europe. I learned to speak German during the year when I was working 6 months in Switzerland. And then I made the commitment when I came back to Australia that my life only can have meaning if I do something to help people. So I decided to become a nurse. When I was in Switzerland, I was doing nursing in an old people's home, and then I decided to become a registered nurse. And it was during the first year that I was witnessed by Sandra Brown at that time. So I gave up nursing after the first year because we won't need doctors or hospitals in the new world. They will all be kindergartens and schools, and anybody can do nursing, but only a few chosen people can understand the divine principle, and I understood very deeply. I recognised I had a responsibility, and the centre leader at that time, a German missionary, she asked me, when you have important decisions to make in your life, does your mother tell you what to do, or do you decide for yourself? 1975 in Australia, and for many, many years, the movement, in 1974, 75, there was quite a lot of growth, and in New Zealand also. I was the 21st member to join in Melbourne, and in 1978, Father brought the 2 churches. We had one branch that started in Sydney with an English missionary, and one branch that started in Melbourne from a German missionary. And in 1978, Father said they must come together. And I was working very closely with the missionaries, with the national leaders and in headquarters, and was doing general affairs in headquarters for a while, and then was also in Canberra when the headquarters was moved to Canberra, was doing Professors World Peace Academy, was a pioneer missionary in Wollongong, in Hobart, did business selling ginseng, retail door-to-door and also wholesale, and was a workshop mother, had many different experiences, and we were photo matched in 1980, and then in 1982 at the Blessing in Madison Square Garden we met for the first time. And then I went back to Australia, he came back to Europe, and then there was a big fight between Austria and Australia, who should go where. And the Austrian leader wanted me to come here, and the Australian leader wanted him to go to Australia. And eventually Joseph went to America in 1985, and in 1986 I decided I need to speak with my husband to discuss our blessing situation, because all the other blessed couples from my blessing in 82 in Australia had already come together. 4 sisters had already brought their husbands to Australia. So I saw no chance to bring my husband also, even though I was in headquarters and doing the accounts for all the businesses, all the church activities, and Professors World Peace Academy and political work, and I was president of the Canberra Friends of Solidarity group, and member of the Australian National Party and vice president of the Young National Party, and very active in public activities. Anyhow, I resigned from everything and went on a 3-week ticket to America to talk to my husband. And there was a change of leadership then in Australia, and the new Korean leader, when I visited him in New Zealand, the regional leader, he said to me, the most important thing is blessing. Position doesn't matter. Most important is save your blessing. If you decide you need to stay in America to spend more time with your husband to resolve the blessing situation, then tell the Korean leader, call me and you have my blessing, stay. So I stayed in America, and our regional leader there was Chun Hyung Park in the Northwest. So I went to join my husband for the first couple of weeks, but was quite shocked when I was then put in a different centre. So I was then in Medford in southern Oregon, and he was on the Oregon coast. And then we were participating in the ministers' campaign, sending ministers to Korea. So after I sent 4 ministers to Korea, and then we had the 6 spiritual children, we could finally start family life. And we had a wedding in America, and my parents and my brother came from Australia to the wedding in America. So we started family life, and then we were sent to another centre as pioneers, just my husband and I with a couple of members. And then in 1988 we were asked if we didn't have a green card we must leave America. So I had a letter from the lawyer saying we were number 7,000 on the waiting list for the green card. But we were told to leave, so we came back to Austria. And I've recognised God works Heavenly Father works in really amazing ways. Many times we have no concept, no idea what's happening, what's coming. And I thought finally now when we come from America, when Joseph returned to Austria, he said it's more difficult for him to come back to Austria than for me. I could adapt easily, I thought, because I had spent 1 year here already. I learned to speak the language. And he said he learned to pray in English in America. It was a very deep experience, 3 years in America. So I thought maybe we could go to Australia. Then our first son was born in 1989, and then the Iron Curtain fell, and my relatives in Prague invited us. We went to visit my auntie, and we were there at Christmas time in 1989 when Václav Havel was elected as the first free president of Czechoslovakia. And I remember when I came home to tell my parents about our blessing, I told them that I believed that Father was the Messiah, and my father told me how when he left Czechoslovakia, he couldn't tell his mother that he was leaving her forever, but he knew it was goodbye, that he could not live under communism. So in 1948, when my father left Czechoslovakia, and then he told me this in 1982, and then we were in Czechoslovakia in 1989, witnessing the first free president, I thought, that's why I had to stay in Europe. That's why we could not go to Australia. And then we had another child, and each time it was another boy, and I had 4 brothers, and I always wanted 5 children, but I thought it would be nice to have 2 girls, to have a sister, to see what it's like to have sisters. So after the 5th one was born, and he was another boy, I prayed in the hospital, why, Heavenly Father, why did you give me 5 boys? And our blessing, our motto was world peace through ideal families. And my husband and I from Austria, Australia, I always had this vision, we have something important, something special, some special mission. And I felt myself as an ambassador of Australia. And so the answer came, maybe the boys need to become famous Vienna Boys Choir boys, all 5 of them. And we already had, the Hayder family already had their children in the Vienna Boys Choir. And then Dr. Riel, her son, also joined the Vienna Boys Choir. And the next year, our oldest son went to Vienna Boys Choir with the youngest son from the Haiders and the youngest son from the Riers, and together they were in one class for 2 years. They were in the primary school the 4th year and 1 year of touring in the choir. And each time one son left the Vienna Boys Choir from us and another one came. So there was always 2 or 3 there until the last one, and then they decided to build an upper level grammar school. And so our youngest son got a scholarship to continue at the upper level, and he's in the final year now at the upper level grammar school at the Vienna Boys Choir. So we're very proud of that. And for myself, after doing so much political and public relations work in Australia, initially coming here to Europe and being only a mother was a little bit difficult. But at the very beginning, I think after the first, maybe after the second child was born, I was invited to Germany to a conference when Young Wee Kim spoke, and he talked about the United Nations of Europe. And they recorded his speech, and I was asked to type it from the tapes. So I was at home with the children and I typed this speech, and it was published, and I was very grateful. I thought, yes, even mothers at home with little children can do mission, can contribute somehow. So I spent 10 years at home with the children, and then when Women's Federation started, I was involved from the beginning in Linz at the founding, and came here to the founding meeting in Vienna. And I always wanted to go to the United Nations. And when I heard that the Women's Federation, the sisters, they went to the UN, I said, I want to go too. And Maya said, yes, you can come. But I didn't know how. And finally, when Elizabeth came from Salzburg, and we had an annual general meeting, and she invited me and she showed me how to come to the UN. Then I came and started representing the Women's Federation at the UN. For 5 years, I was very active in the different committees at the United Nations. And 5 years ago, I realised, actually more than 5 years ago, I realised that the people at the UN are just normal people like everybody else. Just like the politicians are also normal people. I overcame a certain amount of fear, gained certain confidence. And I saw that the people I was working with, where I was doing voluntary work for Women's Federation, I recognised I'm just as good as those people who are being paid at the UNODC and the other organisations. And I said to Heavenly Father, I need to get a paid job here at the UN. And 5 years ago, I started working for the International Atomic Energy Agency. And even though always the situation very challenging, always very short-term contracts, my contract now finishes at the end of September, and I have to take a 1-month unpaid break. But my supervisor told me yesterday he has completed the paperwork. My next contract will be from the 1st of November, and I can continue. And for me, when I started 5 years ago, it was after Father's tour in Europe, in Spain. On the 1st and 2nd of August, Father proclaimed True Parents United Nations. And on the 3rd of August, I started working in 2009 at the United Nations and said, yes, True Parents United Nations. I represent True Parents at the United Nations. So I'm very grateful for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So from now, because we are legend.